This conference is brought to you by CallStack, a total software engineering consultancy.
Thank you, Mo. Hey, everybody. It sounds like some of you are clapping to the beat of the music. Hi, everybody. My name is Kent C. Dodds, and I'm so excited to be here. I'm going to talk about a vanishing network. What does that mean? We'll talk about it. To get things started, though, I noticed there are a couple people who are standing. There's not standing room only, so you can come down, and I'll give you the perfect opportunity to come and take one of these seats, because I want everybody to stand up anyway. If you're physically able, please stand. No, really, I'm serious. Yeah, we're doing this. I know, it's the American coming in here telling you to move and whatever. Put your arms out in front of you like this and squat down and back up. I know it's a little tight. It's tight. You can do like a small one. That's fine. We're going to do 12 of these, and we'll count out loud together. Ready? Okay. 1. You got to count or it doesn't count. 2. Let's start over. 1. No, just kidding. 3. 4. 5. You're doing great. 6. 7. Doesn't that feel good? 8. Yeah, these people up in front are like really going down. 9. 10. 11 and 12. Awesome. Let's stretch up over our heads as high as you possibly can, and then even higher than that. And stretch over to one side and over to the other. Awesome. That feels so good, right? You can sit down. Thank you. Yeah, bravo to you. Our brains need blood to flow, and if your body's not moving, your blood's not flowing. Well, that's not entirely true. There's nuance, just like with everything. All right, I want to start out with a story. This is a story about Kent, still in school, working at a company called Domo in Utah. I was working on a Backbone app. So Domo is a business intelligence dashboard. Actually, quick question. How many of y'all would consider yourselves web developers? Okay, yeah, quite a few. How many have worked in Backbone.js before? Okay, so I'm going to bring up some fun memories for some of you. So this was the app, and we were doing this card editor, and I was asked to add a checkbox to the card editor. It actually wasn't this checkbox. In fact, it didn't even look like this. This is a newer design, but it was the best I could find of this editor screen. And if you remember in Backbone, you used to have you'd have this model view controller, you'd have the models that were in charge of all the data, and you'd have these views that were in charge of that UI. You'd have to call render like all the time. And this is the code that I had to work in. We had I'm going to look at this in detail. So starting up here, we had some code, and then there was some right here. I'm just kidding. This wasn't actually the code at all. But it looks a lot like it because we had one base view that was 2,000 lines long. And then we had other views that would extend from that base view. And that's where I had to find a place to add this checkbox. And it wasn't just the view, it was also the model. And so how long do you think that it took? So just yell out, how long do you think it took to add a checkbox to that UI? A week? 2 weeks? Wow, y'all have some experience with this. Yes, it took 2 weeks of miserable, awful experience. 2 weeks for a checkbox? What? It took me 5 minutes to add the checkbox. That wasn't hard. The hard part, what do you think was the hard part, actually? Why did it take so long? You said 2 weeks. Why do you think it would take 2 weeks? The hard part, understanding the code. The hard part is the network management. Loading the data what should the state of the checkbox be, and updating the data based on what the state of the checkbox is. That's so much of the work that I have done over the years has involved network, and so that's why I want to make it disappear. Just go away. That would be nice, and so that's what we're going to be talking about. I am going to take us on a little journey. This is the Epic Workshop app. So if you go through EpicReact.dev or EpicWeb.dev workshops, this is the learning experience that you're going to go through. And you can actually do this later and go through the whole thing. It's got documentation, everything. So you can go through my talk on your own later if you want. But we're going to do a journey of building the same app in multiple architectures through like the history of how we built for the web and see what happens to the network over the course of this time. So, starting with a multi-page app. In a multi-page app, you have a server that loads up some data. So we're going to get our count here from, oh, come on, cursor. There we go. I need my internet to be really fast because I don't know how to code without AI anymore. And then we're going to render our count here in an H1 count. And then we'll have a form for updating that count. Man, isn't AI great? I love it. I love it. I love it so much. It also helps a lot to have instructions for the AI to follow. But see, the thing is, you can write those instructions, and then the AI can write the code. It's so cool. So yeah, we render the count, and then we render a form for mutating that count. We set the action, and we set the method to post so it doesn't show up in the URL. And then we have, in our case, we're going to have 2 submit buttons, because this is just a counter, increment and decrement. Fun fact, some of you might not know this, but submit buttons can actually have a name and a value. And so depending on which one you click, that's the value that's going to be serialized in the data that's sent to the backend. So that's cool. And so then on the backend, we're going to handle this. We'll say app.post, handle that update count post. Cursor is pretty good, but not quite that good. Yeah, we need to await that. There we go. So we're going to get the form data from that request. We're going to turn that change into a number, because it'll be a string. Change the count, and then redirect. We're going to do post redirect get. Raise your hand if you know why we're doing post redirect get, or what that is. No? All right, raise your hand if you've ever experienced or seen in a web app that says, don't hit the back button. You seen that? Or like when you do, there's this confirmation dialog that says confirm resubmission. You seen that? Yeah, that's what post redirect get solves. So if you just follow this pattern, then it wouldn't be a problem, but people don't know these things. Anyway. Yeah, so this is now working. Awesome. Not very exciting. It's just a counter. But there are a couple of problems with it that I want to address after talking about where the network is here. So there's really actually not a whole lot of network stuff going on. We have an action right here. That's sort of network-related code, and it's pretty indirect. I have update count in both of these places. I could make that a variable maybe, but typically people don't. So there's this level of indirection that we have to deal with, but there's really not a whole lot of problem regarding how much code we have to write, because the browser does so much of this stuff for us. If there's race conditions or form resubmissions or whatever, the browser handles that for us, and we don't really have to think about it much. But the problem is we're really limited on what we're able to do. And so when we're just talking about MPAs, especially back in the day, MPAs have gotten a lot better these days with view transitions and things like that. But back when we were first building MPAs, it was like the only way to build a web app, we ran into some issues. And so we moved into what I call the PEMPA, which is a progressively enhanced MPA, multi-page app. And what this does is it says, hey, we're going to start with the baseline of a functional app. So our app, like, it still works. Everything is operating the way it did before, but we want to make the user experience better. Because right now, if we've got a slow network, you'll be able to notice this a little bit better. You get a full page refresh for every interaction, every form submission. And that makes focus management kind of difficult. Like, what if I wanted to increment like 30 times and I'm a keyboard user? Increment, wait, and then tap, tap, increment. Or I could just sit here on the increment button and just keep tabbing. So like handling focus is a bit of a problem. So we need to bring client-side JavaScript in for that, and showing a nicer pending state than just a spinner up here. And so what we're going to do is add some JavaScript to the page. So we'll just start with a console log JS and bring it over here. We'll bring in a script tag for that JS. Now, if I refresh the page, let's turn off this slow 3G throttling here. We're getting a 404 not found. We need to add some network code. This is also network code, having to add that script tag. And now we are serving that UI directory, so that JS is showing up in here. Hooray! So now we can add some JavaScript to this page. Let's see what Cursor can do with this. Come on, we got our form, and then we add our submit handler, and it thinks it's done, but it's not. Actually, no, here, what else are you going to do now, Cursor? No? Yeah, we're going to need our counter buttons. OK, let's review what it's done. You never just trust what the AI generates for you. That's for next year. So we're going to get our counter form. Oh, we need to have an ID on the counter form. So let's come back over here and put an ID on this counter form. OK, good. And then we're going to have counter buttons so that we can change the opacity, make it look like there's a pending state. So let's wrap our buttons inside of a div with the counter buttons ID. And then we'll have our submit handler that prevents the default. And as soon as we prevent default, we're saying, browser, you're cool and all, but I'm going to do your job now. I'm the captain now. And so that is unfortunate because the browser does a ton, and we often don't do as much as the browser does. But that's what we're going to have to do. But we do it so that we can do stuff like this. Like, let's add an opacity to these counter buttons so that we know, hey, there's a request going on. Then we're going to grab the form data so we can submit it, just like the browser does. But unfortunately, the form data isn't going to contain which button was pressed. And so we have to say, if the event has a submitter, then we'll append to the form data the event submitter name and a value. There we go. OK, so now our form data is properly set. We don't need that change thing anymore. We'll take that form action and form method and use that to fetch. We'll pass the form data as our body. And then, if the response is OK, then we'll get the data response. So we need to update this endpoint for our action to support JSON if we're doing this as a fetch request. And then we update the count. So let's go back and add an ID to our counter, or our count value. And we've already added the script tag, so thank you, Cody. And then finally, we need to update the opacity. But of course, we don't want to leave our users in an infinite, like 0.6 opacity. And so we're going to add a try around all of this stuff so that if there is an error of some kind, that we handle that. And I'll do it finally. Well, finally. Got to spell it right, or it doesn't work. That's syntax for you. OK, cool. Let's see if it works. Oh, no. Oh, that's right. We got to update. See, we've got more network code we've got to deal with. OK, coming back over here. Yeah, so we're not handling the fetch request. But we want to preserve the existing behavior because maybe in these days, maybe the JavaScript doesn't load on their browser, or maybe the user is submitting the form before the JavaScript is finished loading. Whatever the case may be, we need to preserve this behavior, but we want to enhance it with this JSON API. So we're going to say, here's our updated count. And if the header, the accept header, is text HTML, we know it's not a fetch request. This is coming from the browser directly. Whoops, there we go. And so otherwise, we'll send back JSON with the count, and then our UI can handle that. Now I've got myself into a bit of a pickle here because, there we go. Syntax errors, here we go. It is working, and now I can sit here on the spacebar and hit it a million times. Focus management is just like automatic, it just is going to stay there. But also, because of progressive enhancement, I can block scripts, and the whole thing still works as it is. And so, like, that's part of the idea of progressive enhancement is making it so that users can disable JavaScript, but they don't really do that anymore. The other part of it is making it so even if they're on a slow network, the form is still going to work even before the JavaScript finishes loading. So I can hit decrement. It's not a very fast experience because I'm on a slow network, but the count is actually still decremented. So that progressive enhancement was important, especially in those days. And I would argue it's still important. But the next phase, we kind of forgot. We lost our way, and we don't care about progressive enhancement anymore. I kind of feel like I'm in a workshop. I was about to ask for questions, but this is not the setting for questions. So if you have questions, ask me later. So the next era that we got into, because this wasn't enough. Actually, I didn't really talk about that, but like we've got a problem here where let's say somebody gets the requirement that instead of a colon right here, we need to do an exclamation point because we're really excited about this count. So they're going to update this, they're going to refresh the page, and boom, I did it. I did my job, commit, push, we're all good. And then the users come around and they're like, wait, what? It just changed to a colon. Why did it change to a colon? And that's because, oh, yeah, we've got some duplication here. I've got to update it over here, too. Man, that stinks. Hate that a lot. Don't want to do that. And not only is it there's stuff here, but then we've also got the opacity, we've got the interaction with the IDs. Look at all of this network code that we're having to manage, and race conditions, and so many things we're not dealing with that are going to cause our users pain. But we're doing this for our users, right? We want to make it so that if the user is on a slower network connection, they get a nice pending UI right here. They can see, oh yeah, okay, they're responding to me. And so like it is a better user experience, but man, the developer experience got a lot worse, way worse. And so here, how about this? How about we just completely delete any code that is duplicate? And that's what spas are. Let's just get rid of the duplicate logic between these two worlds, the server world and the front-end world, and now we just delete server rendering. That's what happens. So we're going to make this a spa. And what that requires is now we no longer have a server that generates our HTML. We just have a API that returns JSON. Just get rid of all this HTML. We already moved it over into this public directory. Here's our index file that's pretty empty, right? Especially early days of SPA, it was just something like this. Eventually, we started doing static site generation and stuff, but any dynamic stuff can't go in here because we're just sending this up to a CDN and just using our server as an API layer. So we're getting rid of all of the progressive enhancement stuff we had before. Now this isn't form data. We're going to do JSON, and this is our body. And now this is a body.change. We don't care about if they accept HTML. We are only doing JSON. That's all that matters now. And we also need to serve the index HTML. And actually, we also don't care about status codes anymore. 404s don't matter because we've got a client-side router now. So if the server can't handle it, then the client-side router, maybe it can. And if it can't, then it'll just show a 404. But you look at the status code, it's a 200. Ah, what a world. Don't get me started on GraphQL. Status codes, just kidding, it's fine. Okay, so great, now we've got our client side that's totally in control, and it's a React app now. And we like React because like for so many reasons I don't need to convince you. We love React, and it's awesome. But we now have to manage a lot of state, and this should be pretty familiar for most of you. So we're going to switch on the action type. We're going to handle the fetch start, but we also have an update start, and we have the update success and update error. We're going to throw an error because we're not using TypeScript. Like, why would we not use TypeScript? I don't understand. Use TypeScript, people. Jeez. Then we've got our counter component using that reducer. Awesome. We have a use effect. Yeah, wow, use effects. Hooks, amazing. So let's add this function called, actually, that's going to be an async function called fetch count to initialize everything. And that'll dispatch our fetch start, and we'll fetch the count and get the JSON, and then fetch success or fetch error. And then we call fetch count. But we didn't forget to await it. We just can't because this is a use effect, so we'll avoid it just to say, hey, I didn't forget this. I meant to not wait for that. We're just going to pretend that race conditions and unmounting the component, like canceling things, doesn't matter. So that gets us initialized properly. Object, yeah, that's exactly what I wanted. Nope, just kidding. That's destructure that. There we go. So we're initializing properly now. But now we also have to handle updating. Here, that's going to be async. Thanks. And keep on going. Cursor. I was depending on cursor so I could do this fast. So we've got our fetch to the update count. It's a post, but now we're doing JSON. Probably should do headers because, I don't know, somebody told me that would be a good idea. Content type JSON. Nice. We wait for the response to come back, and then we dispatch with that. And then if we're in a loading state and we haven't initialized the count, then we'll show a loading screen. Otherwise, we'll show the error state. And then finally, we notice we've deleted the form. We don't care about that anymore. We're just doing button on-clicks. Yeah, who cares about forms? The app works without it. Look at that. Totally functioning React app. Finally, in 20 minutes of my talk, we've got into React. So yeah, this is cool because now we can do all the cool things, the UI client-side stuff that React enables us to do. But we've lost so much on the user experience side of things. Developer experience, arguably better because we're not duplicating things. Although, like, look at all of this stuff we have to do to manage the network. kind of a pain. But at least we don't have to worry about the duplication that spreads itself all over the application. And we can also still do our really cool like pending UI stuff. So like that's still pending, looks awesome. I'm happy with that. But the problem is on a slower network connection, that first page load is not great at all. Like we have to wait for the JavaScript to load before we can even show the pending indicator. Okay, well you put that in your index HTML, sure. But then once the JavaScript does load, we show more spinners. And now pretty soon your app is just an app of spinners until all the JavaScript finishes loading. And so for that reason, we moved on from this. And not only that reason, but for this reason. And now we've got really awesome frameworks. One of them is on my shirt. Now you're all looking at my shirt. What was he wearing? Oh, yeah. Remix. Remix is awesome. And other frameworks like it have taken us to new heights in the world of React. And I call this the PESPA architecture, progressively enhanced single-page apps. So they server render to do. We need to do that still. But what they also offer, what Remix offers, is this loader in action thing. Now, I'm kind of faking some things. This isn't actually Remix. But the idea behind Remix and other frameworks like it is that now you have a part of your file that runs just on the server. And so we can talk to our database. We can use private keys, whatever. And so here we're going to update our loader to talk to our database. First, we need to get our DB from await, import, come on, cursor. I'm faster than cursor? That's impossible. Okay, and then we'll get our count. We'll wait that. And that loader is going to find its way into our component using this use loader data hook. And sweet, so now we get that initial count. Now for updating, we're actually going to bring back the form. And we're going to use a special kind of form, though, because we still want to prevent the default behavior. As hard as it is to do the browser's job, still want to prevent that default behavior. So we're going to use this special fetcher thing that will have a form component on it, and also will tell us when it's pending. And so we can have that pending UI, and we could even add optimistic UI and all this stuff to that. We don't need that. Okay, and then our action itself is going to need to do actually pretty similar to what we've been doing so far and everything else. It's not update count, it is change. When the AI guesses wrong, maybe your API is bad. I should have taken that hint. So yeah, pretty familiar stuff right here. It's all web APIs. This request is an actual web request. So like it's really nice to work with. I've been working with it for years, and yeah, big fan of Remix. And so now let's take a look at our code that's responsible for network stuff. There's actually not a lot. I would say the only thing really is this action, and we could actually leave that off because it'll just post to the current URL. And so there's not a whole lot that we have to worry about as far as the network goes. And so for a long time, I thought we had arrived. Like, yeah, Remix is the thing. We don't need anything more. Like, network has vanished. But not exactly, because Remix and frameworks like it are focused on the route. And everything is collected on the route. That's where the data loading happens. That's where the actions happen, are on the route. And so if you have a component you want to be reusable all throughout the application, then you can make a special route that just serves that one component and then use that component everywhere. But anywhere that you use the component, you have to go and do some integration with that page's route so that you can load it with initial data. It's fine, but it's not awesome. And this is what really got me excited about React Server Components. That and Evan Bacon's talk at React Conf. I don't know if who saw that talk? React Conf, Evan Bacon's talk? So those of you not raising your hands, you need to watch that talk. And it was React Native. It was super cool, React Server Components with React Native. I keep on switching over there, but I'm coming over here. So we're going to move this on to modern React with React Server Components. And we're going to make this even better. So now we have to restart our server because the way that I have this set up. There we go. And we're getting this error because now we have to use server for this function update count. What is that? Okay. We've got this update count function. We're passing it as this action. That's interesting. So the action no longer is in direction with the URL. You literally just, this is the code I want executed when this action is submitted. That's actually really cool. But we have to configure things because this code, this form, like we can't send a function over the wire. If we're going back to our multi-page app days and you had an action, you couldn't just like put a function into that action prop. You could inline like an event handler, but we all hated that. So we've got to do something special here, and that's where we add useServer. This is saying, hey, there are exports in this module that need to be referenced on the client. So I'm going to have you handle that. Send some of the, anything that needs to be sent to the client can be referenced by the client. So this update count, totally cool to go to the client. Now the code itself is not going to go to the client because we are going to be calling the DB update change. We're accessing our database. We're using private keys. We're whatever. We don't want to send that to the client, but we will send a reference so that the client can call this function. That's pretty cool. And then the counter is an async server component. So this counter component code doesn't actually make it to the front end either. You can think of this counter as like our middleware handler that we had in our multi-page app, except it's a React component. So great, we can get our count from the database right there. We'll look at this pending div here in a second. So let's just see if this is working. And it's not, because DB is not defined. Whoops. Thank you. And there we are. It totally works. And on top of that, it still works without JavaScript or before the JavaScript loads. We still get progressive enhancement. So with Remix, I missed that with Remix, but progressive enhancement is an important part of Remix also. And so like we took ourselves away from PE, and now we're back to progressive enhancement. And on top of that, how much of this code is about the network? The answer is 0. We don't do any network code in our product stuff. Now, I'm using a framework, kind of made-up framework on the side. That's doing tons of network stuff. It's not like we totally deleted the network. So many apps need a network to operate. But my product code now doesn't care about the network. It's disappeared. It's vanished. And apparently, I have an interview in a minute. I thought I turned on Do Not Disturb. What the heck? Let's just do one last thing, though. And this is one of the really cool things. The thing we don't really think about network management, but it is our script tags. So to get interactivity on the client, right now, there's no interactivity on the client. We generate this UI on the server, we send it to the client, and then it's just forms and stuff. Of course, React is on the client to deserialize our React server component payload and stuff like that. But we don't have any interactivity. So if I want to add interactivity to the MPA, I had to add the PEMPA. I had to add that script. But with React Server Components, you just add a component. And if we dive into the pending form, we're going to add this use client up here, and that's my script tag, but it's in the file that needs the script tag. So then I can say use form status. Oh, I keep on messing that up. There we go. And now I've got some interactivity going on here where I can give the user, actually, I think I need to refresh first. Here we go. And that is failing. Oh, right, I blocked it. You need JavaScript for progressive enhancement. So we go on a slow network connection, and I should be getting my interactivity, but I'm totally not. Pretend I am. Let me just 1 second and make sure that I've got it all saved. Oh, it didn't save this one. There we go. OK, so slow 3G, you know what we're looking at. Pending UI, awesome. And that's sick, because I didn't have to worry about adding the script tag. And if I decide, you know what, I don't need this pending div anymore, it's all in one place. And it's just composability. React is pushing composability everywhere, and it's sick. I love this. I'm so into it. I wasn't at first, but now I'm super, super into it, because it unlocks so many awesome things that we'll be able to do in the future. So I'm very excited. Remix is actively working on React Server Components support right now, and it is going to be glorious. And you really should, if you're like sitting here in your seat and you're like, I'm a React Native developer, I don't care about the web, then go watch Evan's talk, because server components are an important thing for native as well. So if you do want to look in deeper into everything that I just showed you, you can check out the GitHub for EpicWeb.dev, React and the Vanishing Network. And you can go through this workshop locally yourself, and I've got instructions and everything for you to dive in deeper and see how I made React Server Components work with just one server. It's pretty sweet. And server rendering, too. It's pretty cool. The last thing I want to share with you You're super. Thank you.